Today, on Callout, Penticton Search and Rescue teams up with Princeton SAR to look for a missing woman.
If you guys can take the river's edge,
okay.
You guys can sweep the banks with our guys.
And later, SAR teams apply lost person psychology to hone in on their missing subjects.
For people with dementia, we often say they go until they get stuck.
Sunday, 4:41 p.m. The Penticton Swiftwater Rescue Team is en route to assist Princeton SAR in a mutual aid call-out. Earlier that day, an elderly woman traveling by bus from Vancouver to Penticton was reported missing when she did not arrive at her scheduled destination. Her bag arrived, but she did not.
When her bags arrived in Penticton and she didn't, the person there to pick her up called a family member to confirm that she was indeed on the bus. Knowing that, the RCMP were called to report her missing.
The family verified she had boarded the bus wearing a blue jacket and white running shoes. The remaining passengers and driver were then interviewed by the RCMP with immediate results.
A woman came forward and said that she had indeed gotten off the bus in Princeton and not gotten back on.
Princeton, a scheduled rest stop before Penticton, is a small, relatively quiet town of about 3,000 residents. Like many communities in the area, the economy here has been a little slow lately. Things have picked up, though, with the reopening of a local copper mine. However, with so many new people in town, the missing woman might not be as easy for the RCMP to spot. But as it turns out, she's no stranger to Princeton after all. She used to live in the trailer park across the river from the bus depot and could have walked over the bridge for a visit.
It is a bit of a hike, but she could have done it. She was supposed to be in pretty good shape.
It's worth a look.
Any chance you've seen her today?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Coming in because we're looking for a missing female.
Interviews with store employees at the mall located right next to the bus stop provide no further clues to the woman's whereabouts.
Thank you.
One last look through town, and it's time for the RCMP to step it up. They alert Princeton Search and Rescue, who set up their command post at the bus depot and begin operations.
Being that we're a small team, we have to call for mutual aid. So in this case, we called Penticton SAR, Karamia SAR, and Oliver SAR.
Randy also calls for the South Okanagan Regional Swiftwater Team, who are now halfway to Princeton and in the middle of an early spring hailstorm. Penticton's Ground SAR team is also en route and updates Swiftwater team leader Hamish Reedy on the situation.
The other thing we had was he had some previous residents on the other side of the river.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Cindy. We'll take a detailed flight up that river.
The Similkameen is in high flow and lies directly between the town and the trailer park. If the subject went down to the river on her way over to visit, there's a distinct possibility she's been swept in. With 4 SAR teams en route by ground and a Swiftwater team in the air, Princeton starts combing the streets and interviewing residents. Within minutes, 2 locals report seeing a woman matching the description sitting on the bench right near the bus depot. Randy sends a tracking team over to see if a direction of travel can be determined from the bench through the grassy area. No luck. Team members go door to door with a photo of the woman, hoping she's there visiting. Perhaps the occupants have seen her in town or passing by their homes.
From Princeton Search and Rescue, we're looking for...
The searchers check both seniors' homes and talk with residents there.
Unfortunately, with old age comes that some people had tea with her that morning, but we discounted that.
However, they did pick up another lead.
Some of the people knew her, which was good because they mentioned that her husband was buried in the local cemetery. So on the off chance that maybe she went up to see his gravesite, we sent a team up to sweep the roads up to there and through the graveyard.
All quiet.
Can you give us a report, please?
Back in town, locals monitoring the VHF radio channel have heard the report and are keeping a sharp eye out as well. Then, another sighting. A retail clerk confirms that an elderly woman matching the description came into her store and purchased a lottery ticket.
Thank you. She was really tiny build, and she was hunched over a little bit. I know she was wearing a blue jacket. I'd never seen her before.
She recognized the description, gave us a direction of travel. She was adamant that she had seen this woman.
The direction of travel continues to point towards the river. With nearly 50 SAR members about to launch a full-scale search along with the RCMP, and many townspeople on the lookout as well, how long could it possibly take to find the missing woman? 5:15 p.m. Out-of-town SAR teams marshal at the Penticton Command Center in preparation for the search. The airborne Swiftwater Rescue Team has also arrived and does a hasty search before landing.
So we've just arrived in the Penticton Valley here. We're just running up the river to our point last seen. Down to the heli site there.
With no immediate sign of the woman on either riverbank, they fly directly over her former residence at the trailer park and land.
We are on the ground here at the info center here right at Penticton, just before the bridge.
Penticton Ground Search and Rescue may be a smaller team, but when we arrived as mutual aid, they were on their game.
Randy, how are you, sir? So where's the bus station and where'd she go?
Where we're staged?
Yeah.
That's the bus station.
Okay.
Search manager Randy Rorvik has been with the Penticton Search and Rescue Team for several years now, but this is by far his biggest call-out. Penticton simply does not get the call volume that teams like Penticton experience.
It's really good to see Penticton and Oliver Suyas, Karamias show up because very experienced people with their teams. We've got 11 from Karamias, 5 of us. Just going to do a kind of quick, hasty search down through here. If you guys can take the river's edge.
Okay.
You have other SAR managers coming in, not there to take over Randy's job, but to provide him with resources of knowledge and experience to help him do his job.
Randy's day job, his paid profession, is work as a land surveyor. He's lived in Penticton most of his life and drops everything when there's a call-out.
It's nice to see 47 people showed up on a Sunday evening to do this, because we know when it's old or young, bad weather, you gotta do it fast.
Hamish and his Swiftwater team lift off for another look at the river.
We didn't spot her on shore, but we did notice an item of interest, a blue object in a pool of water on a sandbar.
The object looks larger than a jacket or a body and is located near the convergence of the two rivers by the Penticton campground.
We decided we would look at it on our shoreline search from Penticton down past the object.
In the meantime, a team member is sent out with a quad to search the pathway and campground across from the sandbar. No items of clothing or signs of the subject are spotted. A dog team is also sent in to comb the bog area along the shore between the river and the bus depot, with similar results. The Swiftwater team regroups at the command center to prepare for the shoreline search.
Basically what you guys are going to do is you're going to stay up on flat land here.
Hamish briefs the ground SAR members supporting the Swiftwater team. Safety is always number one.
We were still hoping to find a live subject, but the odds were we were going to be looking for a body.
The Similkameen is in full flow, and this does not help the search.
As the water comes up, objects that normally would entrap a body or hold it tend to flush.
However, even in relatively smooth-looking water, things can be hung up just below the surface.
But if we find an item of interest that's safe to get at and look at, we'll enter the water if it's safe to do so. If we can conduct a Swiftwater search and never get in the water, that's the best way to go about it.
The team nears the confluence of the two rivers before it's too dark to continue.
We finished task 1 of our Swiftwater search here. Our light's fading fast. We're going to contact command, see what they want done, whether or not we continue downriver. All depends.
If you guys feel this safely, you can do it.
With this
They regroup at the command center and debate checking out the blue object spotted earlier by helicopter further downriver. Right now, it's the best lead they have.
It's all diked on the
So I guess, Randy,
Oliver
not a lot we're going to be able to do tonight.
As the Swiftwater team strategizes over the next move, Randy pores over his notes. He's confident that they should have found the subject by now if she's still in the Princeton area.
Or we can have people walking the streets.
Are you close to Kenley?
I think we should.
As the discussion continues, Randy gets a call. It's good news.
She got off the bus in Hope, got back onto the wrong bus, ended up in Salmon Arm, somehow got back to Penticton. Friends of a friend's called and found out she was at home, so they just phoned us and said she's at home, and it's a happy ending.
A happy ending, but it's a bit odd. 3 witnesses had seen the woman downtown.
A lot of white-haired ladies that live in Princeton.
Being a search manager, I've learned over the years that every witness that you talk to, you have to take with a grain of salt. Sometimes interviewing a person twice or 3 times will get you a different story each time, but some facts always come out the same.
One fact is for sure, this call-out came at a price. 47 volunteers' time on a weekend and a great deal of hardware and expense.
People just don't realize the kind of manpower that's put in to a search and rescue operation.
Nonetheless, Princeton SAR manager Randy Rorvik in particular is happy that the subject is safe at home and even finds a bit of humor in the situation.
She's sitting on a bus and she has no idea that 47 people are back in Princeton looking for her.
Now, SAR teams apply lost person psychology to hone in on their missing subjects.
For people with dementia, we often say they go until they get stuck.
Saturday, 2:30 p.m. A young boy on a family camping trip goes for a short walk in the woods, promising to return in 30 minutes. When he fails to show up after 2 hours, his worried parents call 911. 5:30 p.m. Ground search and rescue crews arrive on scene and gather as much information as they can. How old is the boy? What kind of gear is he carrying? How long ago did he leave? The information allows search managers to match him to a specific subject profile and better predict where he may have gone.
One of the first things we do at the very beginning of a search is assign that missing person to a subject category.
Robert Kester is a leading expert on lost person behavior with extensive experience in search and rescue. Using data from thousands of past incidents, he has identified 41 different subject categories. These profiles take into account a number of factors, such as type of activity, mode of transportation, mental health, and age.
For each of the subject categories, they have their own set of statistics. Probably one of the most common one would be what I call the ring model. How far away from the place they were last seen do you typically find them as the crow flies?
Every category is assigned a speed. For example, someone traveling on an ATV will travel faster than someone on foot. A skier will cover more distance than a snowshoer, but a snowshoer with a pack will travel less distance than a snowshoer without a load. Using speed tables and ring models, search managers are able to quickly determine that the missing boy, age 9, with a maximum walking speed of 3 kilometers per hour and now missing for 3 hours, will not have traveled more than 9 kilometers from the campsite. They also know that over 90% of the time, children his age are found within 3.5 kilometers of their point last seen.
That gives you a sort of how big your search area has to be. We have another statistic. What type of location are they actually likely to be found in?
Each subject category is known to seek or follow specific features when lost.
Autistic children tend to try to find a structure or a building or a small tight place to get into, or they may be attracted to water. For people with dementia, we often say they go until they get stuck. Visually, they tend to just move straight ahead until they hit some type of feature. It could be a fence, it could be thick foliage. It could also, once again, actually be water, and we see a lot of drowning cases.
Healthy children, such as our missing 9-year-old, are known to use paths of least resistance. They typically avoid thick brush and uphill slopes in favor of existing trails and flat terrain. Within hours, and using lost person behavior theory, the SAR managers successfully direct the search teams to where the missing boy has finally stopped next to a large tree. He had wisely decided to stay put and make himself visible, which is the #1 rule of the Hug a Tree and Survive program, advocated by search and rescue organizations. Being lost in the wilderness can be terrifying.
When I was alone, it was just so isolating, so alienated, and so traumatic, and you go through such basic primal fear and emotional distress.
I was afraid. And I was worrying that there might be some dangerous animals in the woods, like bears or cougars.
Emotional duress can cause people to ignore their better judgment and attempt regaining orientation at all cost.
Ça commençait à être très dangereux quand je montais, mais je me suis dit, je vais juste grimper en montagne et essayer de voir quelque chose, ou de voir où est-ce que je m'en vais.
Their mind is being dumped with adrenaline, and they're not able to think straight in the beginning. So the first thing is just stop. Then think about your situation.
Okay, let's go up. Up we go. Lead on.
Emotions play less of a role when a person isn't alone.
We were never worried. We were all, you know what, it was another adventure. We all kind of had a little chuckle about it. We were all, you know, we knew our situation, and we were fine.
Denial, on the other hand, had a strong impact on this group's behavior. When they came upon a large lake that was not on their intended route, they should have clued in that they were nowhere near where they thought they were.
It's getting late in the afternoon, guys. I want to go up. I know you guys.
I was very strongly convinced that I was in Singing Pass. I don't know what it would have taken to convince me that I was at Checkmas Lake. I really don't.
Let's go up. Okay, up we go.
His internal compass was so turned around that he was really in disbelief that this could be Checkmas Lake, and that's part of survival psychology. Is you latch onto a theory or a belief, and that stays with you to the detriment of your travel direction.
When there are no visual cues, such as on snow-covered mountains or in foggy or whiteout conditions, people tend to walk in circles.
I didn't know which way would lead where, so I decided to go left. When it led left, and then it, trailed me off 15 minutes into a complete circle, winding around and bringing me back to where I was.
Most lost people will eventually try to latch on to some type of linear feature. A stream, a ridge, a road, a pipeline, a drainage of some sort. And typically we'll start to follow that.
This is known as route traveling and is common amongst hikers and outdoor enthusiasts with little or no experience. However, it is not a guaranteed way out.
We follow one creek down to the woods, but after we were lost, we took the other creek as the first creek that we were following. So actually, it's the main reason that we got lost.
You're most welcome.
Wayfinding strategies vary depending on the subject category. Young children and people in a state of panic commonly travel randomly in the hopes of finding something familiar. Older children and adolescents sometimes use direction sampling, testing out different paths until they think they found the right one. Adults with maps often employ view enhancement, which consists of gaining elevation, either by climbing a tree or a hill in order to survey the land. Others will choose to backtrack, but reversing directions and finding your own tracks requires a high level of experience and outdoor skills. Overconfident hunters or people in denial are known to travel in one particular direction, believing it's the right one, and ignoring trails and features indicating otherwise.
When you get to a point where you don't know where to go, the best thing to do is just hunker down and hug a tree, we say, and wait. Just to try and dry out, stay warm, and not use up the rest of your energy reserves.
Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Today on Callout, Nelson Search and Rescue enters bear country to help a badly injured tree faller.
We flew over two really good-sized bears, one grizzly and one that was maybe 200 meters away, and it was definitely the biggest black bear I've ever seen in the Kootenays.
And later, fully loaded command mobiles for search and rescue.
It enables us to keep track of the search and plan the next operational period.
Wednesday, 5:04 p.m. Nelson Search and Rescue was called out to Weimar, a small town nestled in the mountains of British Columbia's rugged Kootenay region.
There's a gentleman doing some cat ski clearing of some bush who's fallen a tree on himself and has some deficits on one side of his body, possibly broken leg, pelvis, or back.
Trevor Halsworth was clearing a ski trail near the top of Baldy Peak with another faller when he was struck by a tree. Stranded in the wilderness with no cell phone reception, Trevor's colleague had little choice but to hike down the mountain, a 2-hour trek, and then drive towards Weimar where he could get a cell phone signal to alert search and rescue.
It sounded like he was pretty high up. He was around 6,800 feet. You know, it's steep slope, lots of short alpine trees. It's not a very open terrain. I mean, there's not a lot of places just to land.
Because they will likely have to long-line the subject, a HETS-equipped helicopter is now arriving at the SAR base in Weimar. The helicopter that Nelson SAR members Dr. Mike Innes and team leader Chris Armstrong are now loading with medical gear will be used to locate and access the subject. They lift off towards Baldy Peak, one of the many mountains that make up the vast and uncharted Selkirk Range. Now, the search begins. Despite his colleagues' assurances that Trevor is located near the top of Baldy Mountain and will be easy to spot, this is not the case.
We flew the entire ridge lines and did not find him anywhere, did not find chainsaws, colored gas cans, anything that gave us an indication where he might be.
Subjects lost in the wilderness may look around their surroundings and think that they are easily seen, but many times this is not so. They should try to make themselves visible to search and rescue any way they can. This includes spelling out SOS with rocks, reflecting the sun off a shiny object, or waving a makeshift flag.
Anything that has color, any way to make smoke, anything to get the attention of a rescuer, you need to do.
After several minutes of circling around Baldy Mountain, the team decides to fly lower and search the area below the ridge. Soon after, they spot a man-made trail cutting through the alpine forest.
We could actually see the path through the alpine trees, so we followed it, and it didn't take long to locate the subject. It definitely was difficult because of the clothing that he had. He was blending in pretty good. The only real reason we found him is that you could distinctly see that cat trail cut through the alpine forest.
Trevor is extremely lucky that Search and Rescue found him when they did. Not far away, two large bears, no doubt looking for their next meal, are quickly closing in on his location.
We flew over two really good-sized bears, one grizzly right up on the alpine ridge above where our subject was, and one that was maybe 200 meters away, and it was definitely the biggest black bear I've ever seen in the Kootenays.
Bears in the wild are known to attack people when they perceive threat, but some will go as far as stalking and eating humans. In the last 20 years, bears have killed 53 people in North America, at least 9 of whom were consumed.
I mean, if a large bear came across a human laying in the alpine, not able to defend himself or move, they're opportunists, and that is an opportunity.
With bears, cougars, and wolves calling these mountains home, the SAR teams don't take any chances.
We have team members that do carry firearms, and the members that are carrying these firearms are licensed to do so. We've never had to fire a single shot, but we definitely have had bear encounters, and they will continue to happen.
However, today, the team is unarmed and must be extra careful. They're banking on the helicopter generating enough noise to keep the bears at bay. The pilot finds a suitable landing zone, about a 5-minute hike from the subject, to drop off Chris and Dr. Mike. More of the ground SAR team arrive in the second helicopter. It will fly down the mountain and land on a logging road where it can be rigged for HETS extraction. Because there are no radio repeaters or cell towers in this remote region, the high-terrain helicopter pilot will circle well above the accident scene and act as a communications middleman, relaying information between the ground team, the HETS pilot, and the SAR manager in Weimar.
There's a grizz and a black. Yeah, there's 5 of us. It's almost straight across, eh?
Packing a portable stretcher and other medical equipment, the 5-man team sets out in the general direction of the subject, keeping a keen eye out for the bears. Occasionally, they shout out to the subject and use his response to adjust their course.
Hear him?
Almost 10 minutes into the hike, the team finally reaches Trevor, the injured subject.
It was nice to see the guys after 5-6 hours up there by myself and know things were going to move along now that we had some real assistance, and I just wanted to get myself off the mountain now.
High train 14. Go ahead for high train. We have a pelvic injury of some sort here. Get an assessment of relay for us. Yeah, roger.
Any chance of a fever or
no, like, I don't have any point tenderness. It's just I can't put weight on it.
Fortunately, Trevor appears to be in stable condition, although completely immobilized by his injuries.
We flew in there just at the right time. Just over there was a pretty large bear.
They were quite concerned about where these bears were, and I'd been lying there quiet there with my broken leg, and I guess there's a grizzly 100 meters away.
This is not Trevor's first brush with bears in the wilderness.
You know, I think normally if you're working with a chainsaw, the bears are away. But I was walking once, coming down after cutting, and got to the top of a rise, and I knew there was a huckleberry patch down below me, and I gave a shout, and my God, all of a sudden you hear this thrashing in the bush, and this bear comes barreling up the hill, and it was a big grizzly, stood up at the bottom of this opening, and he stood up on his hind legs, and my heart was beating like crazy. And thank God he turned around and ran down the hill. And it took me about 5 minutes, and I realized that my heart was still beating hard.
To be on the safe side, team leader Chris Armstrong posts 2 members on bear watch at the edge of the clearing.
At one point we did have a bit of crashing in the alpine just below us. We figured maybe the bear had came in a little closer to have a look. We didn't get to see him, but it definitely put everybody on edge because it was a really big bear.
Just sort of in that pelvic area.
It hit this side, then it collapsed here.
Trevor recounts the accident to Dr. Mike. He and another tree faller had been on Baldy Mountain doing some routine felling for his winter backcountry cat ski operation.
up there. We've been working on these cut trails for about 10 years. And every year we try to go out and just do a little bit of cleanup and a little bit of work on the trails.
In the winter, the trails turn into a pristine powder skiing paradise, accessible only by snowcats.
We take people up adventure skiing, powder skiing, up in the mountains. We're in pretty remote areas, and we take them up in a snowcat, and then with a guide and a tail guide, we escort them down the mountain, skiing powder and all sorts of exciting drops, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
Normally, tree fallers work at a safe distance from each other, but this time, Trevor wanted to direct his colleague.
This one corner, I wanted the trees dropped in a specific way, in a specific direction, and so I just stayed right there and looked away and then looked back, and the tree was coming right down on top of me. The butt of the tree ended up hitting me right across the hip on my left hip, but I knew something else was wrong with me. I felt pain in my right hip. And after about 15 minutes, it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to walk.
Don kind of gives a real stabbing tightness back there, but it's straight on the muscles.
Trevor only clears trail in the summer, but it's definitely the most dangerous element of running his cat ski operation. Being a full-time tree faller is one of the most deadly jobs in the world. In British Columbia, up to 25 fallers a year have been killed. Trevor is hurt, but he can consider himself very lucky. He has a massive bruise on his left hip, but it's the right side that concerns Dr. Mike.
We were initially thinking it might be a pelvic fracture, and so that requires a full spinal immobilization so that the injury doesn't get any worse.
Mike is a huge asset to Nelson Search and Rescue. While all SAR groups have members qualified in first aid and CPR, very few have an actual doctor on the team.
Hey, Mike, I think I'll call heads. You concur?
Yeah, we are heads.
High train 14. Go ahead for high train. Where we're at, there's really not any good ground to sit down. So can you relay to Duncan that we're gonna head out of this location? Yeah, roger.
When you've got Dr. Mike on board, I don't have to worry about doing the medical side of things. I don't have to worry about making a lot of those medical decisions. When he's there, I can make the scene safe, secure, organized. He takes care of the medical, he makes the medical calls.
In addition, Dr. Mike can administer painkillers to injured subjects in the field, something most regular SAR members do not have the advanced medical training to do.
You know, you're not shocky right now. I don't think you need to start an IV.
When it comes to giving painkillers or analgesics in the field, that's one thing that I can offer subjects. That being said, it's always a difficult decision. You always have to weigh the benefits versus the risks. You certainly don't want to have unwanted side effects that you can't deal with. But certainly relieving pain often aids in the evacuation.
What we'll do, let's get a spot here cleared out, guys. I think probably we'll...
Dr. Mike is a blessing to us. He's not just a doctor, he's a doctor with wilderness-based skills. He's going to make different decisions than a medical doctor from a hospital would.
Just because you know how to provide medical care doesn't mean you can provide it efficiently or safely in the outdoor environment, especially in some of the challenging terrain and weather that we deal with. You know, when you're out in the snow dealing with a hypothermic patient, or, you know, first of all, your IVs freeze, and to try and start an IV is a difficult procedure in itself, but to try and do it in wind and rain and when you're shaking and cold, and you know, it's a very different approach.
There's been times in the past where, you know, there's decisions that have to be made. Should we stop CPR? You know, should we fly directly to the hospital? You know, our only ability is to use our comms to talk to the paramedic down in the valley, or call an emergency room and talk to a physician directly. Having the doctor on board, all that stuff is out and is gone. He makes those calls.
Based on his medical evaluation of the subject's injuries, Dr. Mike decides that Trevor should be flown directly to a regional hospital in Trail, not back to SAR base in Weimar, where he would require further transport in an ambulance.
So the subject's now packaged, he's good and stable. Definitely a hip injury.
We're just waiting for the HETS team to fly in the ARP and some flight harness for Doc here, and we'll get him out of here pretty quick.
Dr. Mike will accompany the subject on the end of the HETS line. He retrieves the ARP, or Aerial Rescue Platform, and the team works quickly to package Trevor for evacuation. Dr. Mike was not always this proficient in the backcountry. His first foray into search and rescue was by chance, when during a casual hike in the woods he was flagged down by a woman covered in blood and requesting urgent medical attention. Dr. Mike soon found himself on board a helicopter, racing to the scene of an accident on a steep mountainside where a seriously injured climber was in need of evacuation.
We were able to call in climbing rangers from Banff who flew in with their long line and placed him in a sling, and they long lined him off the mountain, which was extremely slick. I was totally out of my element there. I was in good hands with the guides, but that's when I sort of vowed to become more proficient at this. And if I was going to live and play in the Kootenays, then thought I should become a little more proficient at that side of things. And so that was the start of my search and rescue career.
That was 10 years ago, and today Dr. Mike is a seasoned SAR volunteer. He hooks up to the long line, and they are gently lifted off the ground. They will be flown down the mountain to the HETS staging area, where Trevor can be loaded inside the helicopter for transport to hospital.
So subject's flown out. We're just gonna head back to the original LZ. It's a nice spot to pick us up with that little 206. So there's quite a horrendously large black bear over here, so we're just gonna keep going.
They took me to the doctor, and he did some orthopedic surgeon work in there, and put 3 screws into my femur, and I was out of the hospital 4 or 5 days after that.
Trevor is now safely back home to his young family. He'll be on light duty this cat ski season, leaving the guiding activities to his capable team while he recovers.
Let's go to the restaurant.
His injuries could have been much more grisly had search and rescue not arrived on scene.
There was 2 bears in the area, and he'd been out there for 6 or 7 hours. I mean, there's a great possibility that a bear could have found him, and that would have been it.
Now, fully loaded command mobiles for search and rescue.
It enables us to keep track of the search and plan the next operational period.
Canadian search and rescue teams are equipped with an impressive array of high-tech equipment designed to support even the most challenging missions. The mobile command post in particular is a powerful resource that enables search and rescue teams to function from virtually any location. A great deal of thought is put into their design.
There's a severe space limitation, so consequently whatever happens inside those spaces has to be very carefully designed, and that design should follow form follows function philosophy, and in this case it's the incident command system.
The incident command system defines the process of search and rescue.
It's almost like a production line where we start at one end of the truck with all the planning, goes through all the way to operations where the assignments are done and issued to the teams and briefed, and off they go to complete their assignments.
When the teams head off, they'll be carrying GPS radios with them.
The 6 portable radios that we carry in this truck are equipped with the GPS microphones. That allows us to track each team that carries one of those radios.
The GPS radios are tracked on the status map workstation. This is particularly helpful in noting the areas covered during a search. The status map workstation is where most of the action in a mobile command center happens.
It's where the mapping and all your initial information is laid out. It can be used electronically with the overhead projector, or it can simply be used as a big whiteboard with a paper map and a plastic overlay, and then in that case it's back to the old-fashioned style using the colored pens.
Sliding map boards provide additional backup.
If the electronics fail, we always have the ability to manually pull out maps and start to lay overlays on them and plot our search areas from this. What we've got in here is quite an extensive computer system, which may look excessive, but on a large incident, we're looking at managing possibly 100, 150 people. It enables us to keep track of the search and plan the next operational period. Although we use a lot of computers, we still need to have our fail-safe systems. So regardless of what we're doing electronically, we still use a lot of the old-fashioned techniques, which is to do our assignment sheets and also have the old magnetic name board where we can assign names onto different tasks manually. A recent addition to our toolbox has been 2 thermal imaging cameras to search in darkness. This is a temperature differential, not low light. These cameras can see in any kind of light, even in daylight, and it will show the temperature difference between whatever it's looking at.
Downstream 2, far side.
Another recent addition has been this computerized radio console. It's actually a dispatch console that allows us to connect radios, cell phones, satellite phones together and allows people in the field to actually speak over a satellite phone if required. This way we can connect to other agencies, to ambulance, to police, to fire. We can link somebody who calls in on a cell phone directly with a volunteer in the field on a VHF portable radio so they can have a two-way conversation. This is a BGAN satellite unit that uses Inmarsat. This is a low-orbit satellite that is very much reachable from our part of the world. This allows us to not only use a phone line, but gives us broadband access to the internet. Quite often we're operating in boundaries that are way beyond normal cell coverage. And although the satellite data is incredibly expensive, at least now we have the ability to go on Google Earth or other resources to assist in our mapping and search plans.
High-tech, low-tech, all in one box, on wheels. It even comes with coffee. Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Today on Callout, Kent Harrison uses sonar to search for a missing person.
When they went to see him this morning, he disappeared.
And later, military pilots train on a Cormorant helicopter.
It's probably the coolest thing we've got in the forces.
Sunday, 12:20 p.m. Kent Harrison's search and rescue are on scene at the Harrison River to look for a missing person.
Last seen at midnight last night.
The subject is a male in his late 20s who was camping by himself on a gravel spit.
Some relatives of his dropped him off there, and when they went to see him this morning, he disappeared.
The subject might have left on foot, but the team is quick to rule this out.
This is really ugly, ugly bush in here. There's no... Other people were camping at the north end of the spit. They both had, they had 2 dogs, and they really felt that if somebody had passed by them in the night, bearing in mind that the spit is quite narrow, that the dogs would have alerted them to somebody in the area. And they're absolutely positive that nobody came past them in the night.
The subject's boots were found at the campsite, further suggesting that he hadn't attempted to hike out.
All his stuff was still there, his cell phone, personal gear, shoes, everything. Nothing moved. The fact that all his gear was still there, it really led us to think that the subject had gone into the water.
Unfortunately, both sides of the gravel bar are equally dangerous. On the eastern side stretches a 2 to 3 meter deep reed-infested floodplain that looks deceptively shallow. On the western side flows the main channel of the Harrison River, which conceals a strong current under its calm surface.
If he had fallen in on the west side of the spit, the current would have taken him quite a ways down the river.
Hoping to locate some clues or evidence, 2 members are sent on jet skis to search the flooded area. Other crews are deployed on a jet boat to cover the length of Harrison River between the point last seen and the river's confluence with the Fraser.
The water was not clear at this time. It was full of glacial silt. So what would normally be clear water was actually quite murky and difficult to see into.
So murky, in fact, that after an extensive search, nothing was detected. Search manager Neil Brewer decides to suspend the search until they can bring in proper tools for the job. 3 days later, the SAR team returns to Harrison River to pick up where they had left off.
So today we are assisting the RCMP dive team, and hopefully we'll have a positive outcome.
The team's 27-foot jet boat, the Spirit of Harrison, takes the crew as well as 2 members from the RCMP dive team to the flooded area east of the spit. They hope that today will bring some kind of closure to the family of the missing subject.
The team had received some emails during the week from a family member asking why the search had been suspended and pleading with us to keep searching because he's sure that his relative would be found. I found that very difficult, but I assured him that we were doing all that we could.
The team members who volunteer for search and rescue are everyday people who truly care and empathize with subjects and their relatives.
I think most people don't really know what goes into search and rescue and who the people are that do it. And we have the lady that works at the video store, we have general handyman and people who work in finance, the lady that works at the bank, you know, they're people from the community. Even though we knew there was a high likelihood he would turn up in a few days, we still went out there and did whatever we could to search for him.
For today's task, the RCMP has brought along their side scan sonar.
The RCMP's sonar is a vertically oriented sonar that is suspended on a tripod. So that works by dropping the tripod into the water, and it then does a sweep of 360 degrees, and it's very accurate.
The sonar sends focused sound waves to the bottom of the river, which are then reflected back and displayed as an image on the connected monitor. The crew sweeps the riverbed in 85-meter increments with sufficient overlap to ensure a complete and accurate scan.
Let's go, so our stern is just at the back end of this weed patch.
We've been at it about an hour now. Slow going. The whole area was covered with these underwater reeds that really hampered the ability of the sonar to scan a wide area. So it was a long process to try and cover the whole area.
As the morning comes to a close, the crew reconvenes with the search managers to come up with a plan for the afternoon. Kent Harrison Search and Rescue decides to use its own side-scan sonar in the main channel of the Harrison River. The SAR team's sonar applies the same technology as the RCMP's unit, with the added bonus that it can be towed behind a moving vessel.
It's able to scan a wide area while moving, so we're able to cover a large area in a shorter amount of time.
A crew of 3 scans the floor of the Harrison River, while 2 other members search the shorelines on jet skis. They thoroughly cover the area from the point last seen to 4 kilometers down the Fraser River, but find nothing. At 4 p.m., the search is again suspended. Friday, 5:35 p.m. 5 days after the initial call-out, the team is paged by the RCMP and muster at SAR base.
Where we were the other day, and it's to do a code 4.
Some fishermen had spotted what they thought was a body floating in the water near the end of the spit.
Because of the reeds, the body had been submerged and undetectable until now. As the team prepares to leave, a truck rolls up. It's a relative of the subject.
We're going across the bridge.
We told them, well, just follow us and the RCMP will be there and you can talk to them about the situation.
We try as much as possible to keep them informed and involved, but at the same time, we have to focus on the incident, and we rely very much on the RCMP and their resources to cater for the family members and relatives on scene.
At Harrison River, 2 SAR members on jet skis head to the gravel bar to secure the site. 4 other members take the coroner and 2 RCMP officers aboard their 20-foot rescue vessel, the Shearwater. The RCMP stand by as Kent Harrison SAR members recover the body. Back at the dock, it's a somber moment for everybody as the body is identified by the relative.
I'm Neil.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's worked out this way.
Although it was a fairly disastrous ending for this individual, there was closure for the family, and there is not always closure.
Now, military pilots train to fly the Cormorant.
We equated to drinking out of a fire hose the first little bit of the course.
Thursday, 5 p.m. Canadian Forces Search and Rescue was called out to a sinking vessel off the coast of York Island, north of Prince Rupert at the mouth of Hecate Strait. Military search and rescue teams have to be ready to go anywhere, anytime, and in the poorest of weather conditions. That's what makes the CH-149 Cormorant an excellent aircraft for the job. It's powerful, fast, and for good reason, dedicated solely to search and rescue in the Canadian Forces. At 442 Squadron in Comox, British Columbia, 3 candidates are striving to make the grade as Cormorant pilots. Learning to fly this helicopter is an opportunity of a lifetime.
I've worked really hard to get to this point, and it's what I've wanted right from the get-go, so this is kind of nice. I finally got to where I want to be, so I'm going to relax and enjoy this for a little while and try and be the best search and rescue pilot I can be.
These guys I'm flying with all have 2,000 hours on the Cormorant and a lot more on other aircraft, and I have 150 hours, so I got a lot to learn.
Right now, my goals are to pass this course, first and foremost, get to a squadron, and feel like I'm contributing.
At 74 feet long and weighing in at over 32,000 pounds, the Cormorant is a beast of a helicopter.
It's way bigger than anything I've ever flown before. Like if you compare it to my last aircraft, which was the 412, it's 3 times bigger just in not only space, but weight and capability.
With 3 turboshaft engines, advanced avionics, and a powerful radar system, the Cormorant blows its predecessors out of the water. Fully loaded, it can clock 278 kilometers per hour. The Cormorant's unique blade system is ideal for tight spaces. It can maneuver into a small, confined airspace with lots of power to pull back out.
Steady left, 1. Right's touching, left right's touching. Nose is just above the ground. Benches.
The CH-149 is fully equipped. On board is the full array of gear required for SAR technicians to perform rescues on land, in the water, and underwater. There are 2 hoists for raising and lowering SAR techs and survivors, an ice protection system that includes heated rotor blades, a helicopter flotation device in case the crew has to ditch the aircraft, and the ability to fly over 1,000 kilometers without refueling. This machine is built tough. From steep mountain ranges to hundreds of kilometers out at sea, the Cormorant can fly search and rescue crews anywhere in the country in the worst wind, rain, and snowfall.
I might be a little bit biased, but it's probably the coolest thing we've got in the forces.
So setting up on a modified downwind and turning final.
The candidates already know how to fly other aircraft. Now they must learn to fly the Cormorant. It's a 3-month course led by highly experienced instructors who know just what it takes to be a cormorant pilot.
What's the FRC response? We equate it to drinking out of a fire hose the first little bit of the course because it is a big helicopter and it's got a lot of systems that they're not used to.
A cormorant pilot's job can be daunting and very dangerous. The lives of the crew and the subjects are always at stake. There's very little room for error, and the candidates are trained accordingly.
You want to be prepared for every day. There's no days off, there's no slack days, there's no downtime built into the course at all. It's go, go, go for that 3 months.
Major Weisenborn speaks from experience. She was the first Canadian search and rescue pilot to fly an actual mission with the Cormorant.
It was a medevac off a cruise ship. The lady had a heart attack, I believe. That's my one little bit of claim to fame.
Yeah, you're lucky today since we're not flying. We're going to go through a briefing.
Cormorant candidates come to train at 442 Squadron in the hope of joining Canada's search and rescue forces. And the instructors do their best to make it happen.
Any questions before we start? No?
We'll give them every chance that we can give them to get them through the course. But if even after that, we will we'll terminate their course and we'll send them back to their home units. Some pilots never get comfortable doing the job.
Typically, a Cormorant crew has 2 pilots, an aircraft commander and a first officer, as well as a flight engineer and 2 search and rescue technicians, or SAR techs.
Up front, we have the 2 pilots. One of them's primary goal is to fly the aircraft and maintaining a stable platform for the guys in the back. The second pilot is monitoring all the systems, keeping an eye on what's going on in the back, so everyone is in the loop and working on the same page.
The flight engineer, or FE, is the eyes and ears of the Cormorant. When they are on scene for a rescue, it's his job to guide the pilots to where they need to go and to ensure the safety of the SAR techs.
They can't see what's happening on the ground, so I have to tell them. I have to tell them when to move, how to move. I'll call obstacles. There's a 3 at 3 o'clock at 15 feet.
The flight engineer is also the mechanic should anything go wrong. Like the rest of the team, the flight engineer must be on his game at all times, as he cons or controls the aircraft and its crew.
There's a lot going on. To be able to make a quick decision, adapt to change right away, it's a hard job. It is. It's a challenging job.
The SAR techs are the medics. Their job is to access the subjects by hoist, parachute, or scuba gear, provide medical care, and get them to safety. It's a team effort involving the entire crew.
It is very important that from the get-go they incorporate all of the different members of a flight crew into each other's training, just so that you can learn to predict and what to expect out of each position within the airframe.
A month into the course now, the students are training on a simulator known as the Cockpit Procedures Trainer and about to begin exercises on the Cormorant, first learning to perfect a hover. After that, it's hoisting, over land, then over a moving boat. All of this initially during the day, then in the dark using night vision goggles. Later, the pilots will go to Britain to train on a full-motion flight simulator, learning to deal with severe flight emergencies. Candidates who make the grade on this course will get a seat as first officers right next to the aircraft commander. For further training, of course.
5, it's reading 0, temperatures are good.
Wednesday, 3 p.m. Cormorant helicopter pilot candidate Captain Jay Hall is on his 2nd hour in the simulator, running through a pre-flight checklist and system tests.
Warning.
Here, the students are trained on the helicopter's instrumentation and startup procedures, and ultimately on how to fly and operate the Cormorant on a rescue mission.
Wheels.
For such a large and complex helicopter, the cockpit design is quite simple. Both the pilot and co-pilot have identical controls and instruments, allowing the aircraft to be flown from either position. The Cormorant has what is known as a dark cockpit. Control panel switches will only light up if the aircraft is in distress. This allows the pilots to focus on the horizon or on the mission at hand and react to specific alerts as they develop. Beyond controls and displays, the simulator enables students to practice responding to a variety of flight emergencies. Here, mistakes can be made and lessons learned with no harm done.
I give them the same things that I've seen, from the very small, insignificant problems such as a button isn't reacting properly, right up to an engine failure or a simulated engine fire where they'll have to take the helicopter and land it as soon as possible.
Along with being a safe way to train, the simulator is also very cost-effective. An hour of actual flying time on the Cormorant clocks in at over $18,000. And at about $39 million per helicopter, you don't put it at risk doing system and malfunction exercises.
It's really an invaluable tool. And you'll find that when pilots are doing that, they'll get very engaged and it becomes real to them.
But while the cockpit procedures trainer is good for learning the controls, there's no substitute for actual in-flight training or working with a crew. Everyone looks forward to flying and being involved in search and rescue. It's their passion. And with a full roster of simulator training now behind them, the pilot candidates gear up for a live exercise. The goal of today's training mission? Maintain the Cormorant in a stable hover position. This may sound like Rescue 101, but a stable hover is a critical component in the rescue process. It's the basis for most missions, hoisting in particular.
That's 90% what we're doing here, right? So that's what a search and rescue pilot needs, is a really steady hover.
The sheer size and weight of the Cormorant makes hover operations tricky. When fully loaded, the CH-149 can weigh over 32,000 pounds. Keeping this aircraft steady in heavy winds, rains, or snowfalls is quite a challenge. Students must be able to perform this task flawlessly before they can move on to the hoisting phase. During these exercises, the instructor has one simple objective, first and foremost.
My role is to make sure the student doesn't kill anybody. It seems a little bit extreme, but they're already pilots. They should know how to fly the helicopter. They should know how to hover the helicopter. We're teaching them how to hover and fly this helicopter.
All training missions are followed with feedback from the instructors.
We'll sit down in the briefing room. We'll really talk about how the flight went, what went good, what went bad, and then provide them written feedback as well.
Students learn from their mistakes, practice in the simulator, and do more training flights over and over. Practice makes a perfect hover.
You got to slow down extra soon like that, that's fine. We don't want to be crawling in from the half mile back. Students will have good days, they'll have bad days. The trip previous to the one yesterday, the student had unfortunately a bad day where he just couldn't seem to get his hands and his feet and his brain all working together. We talked about it afterwards in a debrief, and we figured out what we were going to do to fix it. And he came out yesterday, and it was a fantastic trip. I was running out of things to give him just because he was doing so well.
On the next call-out, the Cormorant pilot candidates learn hard lessons.
To this day, I wonder if we had been able to go out that night, could we have saved him?
Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Today on Callout, it's Whistler SAR to the rescue as the subject says goodbye to his family.
I miss you so much. I really need you now. I'm scared.
And later, military SAR helicopter pilot rookies do their first live hoist.
Knowing you have someone on the hook, it's an actual life on the hook. You know, you want to step up your game even more.
Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Whistler Search and Rescue is called out to Brandywine Glacier, a popular spot for snowmobiling just outside of town. David Johnson was out sledding with a friend when he drove over an opening in the glacier and tumbled down a 30-meter deep bergschrund. A bergschrund is a crevasse formed when the moving glacier breaks away from stagnant ice. Fortunately, precipitation and avalanche activity have lined the bottom of the hole with snow and cushioned David's fall.
In he goes and he bounces on against one wall of this crevasse, another one, and crashes down on the bottom and doesn't get clobbered by his machine. And his friends saw him go in. If no one saw him go in, that would have been a bit of a horror show for us to go and try and find him.
Trapped between ice walls and shaking from the cold, David uses his cell phone to record a video message to his family.
Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I feel so bad. I came through that hole and I jumped at the last minute, but I hit the rocks and fell down the rocks. Oh, my ribs hurt so much. I'm standing up to try and keep warm. That's it, baby. You don't need to worry about me no more. I quit. It ain't worth it. I miss you so much. I really need you now. I'm scared.
What David doesn't know is that paramedic and ski patroller Wayne Flan and 2 other SAR members are already on their way to the glacier.
We'd sent an advanced team in there, 3 guys, just to rappel one of our members, the paramedic, down into the crevasse.
It was pretty obvious when we got there because there was a track that led over a bump and then the track disappeared into the hole. And there was a few bystanders around who were with him, and we knew that's where the spot was.
Down in the hole, the sound of the helicopter somewhat eases David's fears.
Oh, helicopter just flew over, so hopefully it won't be much longer. I was trying to get my hands warm. I climbed all the way up to there. It was brutal. I can't even believe where I am. This is just outrageous.
The team must use ropes to lower Wayne down into the crevasse to evaluate the extent of David's injuries before they can determine how to get him out. To anchor the rope system in the alpine, where there are no natural features such as trees, they dig 2 trenches in the snow and place a pair of skis inside each one. Then, they run a strap down from each pair of skis and fill the trenches with snow. The resulting system is very sturdy and consists of 1 belay line and 1 safety line. Carefully maneuvering around the unstable snow roof, the crew lowers Wayne halfway down into the hole. From there, it's a dozen meters on foot to the subject.
I could actually walk the rest of the way down on a slope angle, and then I got to the bottom and I started to assess him. He seemed okay. He was kind of a little out of it. He might have had a minor concussion. He had some back pain. I think he had a compression fracture in his thoracic spine.
Typically, an elaborate and time-consuming rope system would be used to raise the subject out of the crevasse. But with only 2 hours of daylight left, Whistler SAR decides to perform a challenging HETS rescue, long-lining him out using a helicopter.
You're going to just put an unattended line down in the hole?
Yes.
At the nearby Callahan Resort, the helicopter is configured for a HETS mission. Acting as spotters on board the helicopter are Binti Massey and Gavin Christie.
Wayne's already up there with the subject, and we are pre-rigged in the helicopter here. And as always, fighting daylight a little bit. A little bit. We should have enough time.
Stationed just below the mouth of the crevasse and coordinating between Wayne and the rope team is SAR member Maddie Bodkin.
The crevasse was not vertical in nature, it was dogleg shaped, and he was down at the very bottom of something which was approaching 90 feet. So before we could start a HETS rescue with the helicopter, we had to raise the subject up to a platform where the helicopter could then pull the subject vertically up and out of the crevasse.
I basically got him into the screamer suit, which is a suit that we use to pull people out on the HET system. We pulled him up to a point where he could actually stand on the snow slope and look straight up the hole, and that's where we got extracted with the HET system.
So the helicopter comes in, and sure enough, the rope just was expertly dropped right in the hole, and you know, we got it right down to Wayne and the subject, who are still 50 feet below the surface of the glacier, and he clips on to both of their harness, and the message is given to the pilot now that we're into a lift, and he lifts them straight out.
I've never done this kind of a rescue before out of a Bergstrand. They pulled us both up. When we came up, I had to push off one little area of the rock face with my feet, but we went pretty much straight up out of the hole. It worked out really well.
It was unbelievable when they popped up out of the crevasse, and we realized that we'd done it in the time frame, and that, you know, with approaching nightfall being such a consideration, we'd actually accomplished this. It was a pretty amazing feeling.
They lifted us out. We went to another zone where we could land on the snow, and then another helicopter came in right away. He could actually physically walk himself into the other helicopter. Put him in a seat, I went with him, and we flew him right to the helipad where we transferred him to an ambulance, and then he brought him to the clinic.
We managed to yank him out by rope underneath a helicopter just before grounding. Like, it took about 4 hours to get him out of that one.
If we would have had to use a conventional rescue by pulling him up with a two-rope system on a stretcher, etc., we would have been there till probably midnight.
Thanks to their regular training, the team makes it off the mountain with only minutes to spare until sundown.
We do a lot of practices for our rope rescue, and one of the practices we do is breaking down our stations as quick as we can. So we broke the stations down and packed everything up, and were able to ski to the bottom of the glacier in a record time and loaded the machines up, and we were gone in probably under 10 minutes. It was pretty impressive.
Now, live hoisting with military SAR pilot trainees.
Finally, after 13 years of wanting to go primary SAR, I've got my wish, and I'm starting that. So it's a whole new adventure.
At 442 Squadron in Comox, British Columbia, 3 experienced military pilots are learning to fly and operate the CH-149 Cormorant, one of Canada's dedicated search and rescue helicopters. At 74 feet long and weighing in at over 32,000 pounds, it's big, powerful, and fast. Today, the students are rotating through an overland hoisting exercise near the base of Mount Washington. At the controls on this training flight is Captain James Luce.
Finally, after 13 years of wanting to go primary SAR, I've got my wish, and I'm starting that. So it's a whole new adventure.
While en route, Squadron Training Leader Major Jen Weisenborn communicates to the aircrew a brief summary of today's objectives.
This trip, hoisting, starting with the empty hook, and then perhaps some singles.
Hoisting is done during rescue missions when the Cormorant helicopter is unable to land. Pilots must develop excellent hovering skills to keep the Cormorant stationary when hoisting, particularly during extreme winds and poor visibility. Now halfway into the 3-month Cormorant pilot training course, the students are tested on their ability to fly into a confined space and hold a steady hover for live hoisting with search and rescue technicians on the line. These flying skills are critically important because if the helicopter moves out of position during the hoist, the line can sway and contact obstacles on the ground, causing injury to those on the hook.
We trust each other. They trust us with their lives. Really, we have their lives. When they're on the hook, we have their lives in our hands.
The trainees are acutely aware of this, even with today's relatively calm weather.
Knowing you have someone on the hook, it's an actual life on the hook, you know, you want to step up your game even more, because the better hover that you can have, the easier it is for everybody's job. So that's what a search and rescue pilot needs, is a really steady hover.
The Cormorant is equipped with 2 hoists in case one malfunctions. The cables are located in a compartment just above the side door. The SAR tech clips onto the cable in preparation for lowering on the hoist. The flight engineer checks to ensure he's safely hooked up and that the hoist equipment is working properly. As the cormorant approaches the target, the pilot's view is blocked by the nose of the aircraft, and he must transfer con, or control, to the flight engineer who has a bird's eye view of the area under the helicopter.
See, they can't see what's happening on the ground, so I have to tell them. I have to tell them when to move, how to move. I'll call obstacles. There's a tree at 3 o'clock at 15 feet. So there's a lot going on.
Clear communication between the pilot and his eyes, or crew members in the rear, is crucial at this stage. The instructor listens to every word.
When we're in the hover, my job is to make sure he's managing the aircraft properly and that he's coordinating with the crew properly in order to successfully hoist somebody down to the ground and back up again safely.
Yeah, okay, so you have references. All right, now we can use those trees once that works.
When hovering over land, the pilot selects fixed reference points on the ground, such as a tree or large rock, to gauge the aircraft's position.
In order to hold a high hover, typically you pick a reference off the nose, if you can, and then something off towards your 90 degrees, and maybe even something at your 45.
While you're hoisting, you're talking. And you also describe to the pilot, you paint a picture of what's happening. The SAR tech is a quarter way out, halfway out, 3/4. He's approaching the ground. SAR tech's on the ground. He's disconnecting. This type of thing, so he knows exactly what's happening.
Holding steady in a hover, the second SAR tech is hoisted down from the cormorant. With both medics now on the ground, Captain Luce will circle the area, then return to pick them up. In a real emergency, the SAR techs would be tending to the injured now and preparing them for extraction. Captain Luce eases the cormorant into position as the SAR techs watch from the ground, fighting the intense force of the rotor wash. With the helicopter once again in a steady hover position, the hook is lowered by the flight engineer. The SAR techs connect onto the line in what is known as a double hoist. With the SAR techs back in the helicopter, Major Jen Weisenborn prepares to initiate another hoist exercise when there's a problem. One of the hoists has malfunctioned.
I have hoist fail, I have triple eights and motor hot, so you want to cycle the power for me, please.
The inboard failed, and I tried to do a reset, and it didn't work. We could have carried on with the external hoist. It's totally legal. But because that aircraft is on standby and the other aircraft that was available was busy, we elected to go get it fixed so that if there's an actual call-out, we have two serviceable hoists.
The hoisting exercise is terminated, and the Cormorant crew returns to base for repairs and the instructor's review of the student's performance.
Very windy conditions all across the south coast today.
Friday, 8 a.m. The search and rescue team at 442 Squadron in Comox, British Columbia is briefed on the weather.
Has already reached 80 knots.
The forecast is not promising. Winds are picking up to near hurricane levels. This, of course, is when the action happens in search and rescue.
When the conditions get less than ideal, that's when they usually get called. It's pretty rare that on a blue, sunny day that they get called out.
8:35 a.m. The storm has taken its toll, as 442 is called out to a vessel in distress in the waters close to Port Hardy on the north end of Vancouver Island. With no time to spare, the crew prepares the cormorant for takeoff. 8:43 a.m. Less than 10 minutes go by and the mission is stood down. The Coast Guard is on scene, and the weather is still very unpredictable. The aircraft commander on the cormorant decides to stay on base and not risk the lives of his crew. Ultimately, it's the pilot's decision to go ahead with the mission or to wait for safer conditions. Saying no to a rescue call is tough, especially when it's a matter of life or death.
To be able to say no is a very difficult thing to do because you know somebody's in trouble, you know somebody's hurt, and you want to help them to the best of your ability. And we're given a lot of tools to do that. So for the pilot to say no, he has to avoid all the variables. I still remember one trip where I got a call one evening to go out rescue a man who was overdue. He was a fisherman, and his wife called and he hadn't come back yet. And I remember looking at the weather, it was freezing rain, it was low overcast clouds, it was over the ocean, and it just wasn't doable. I said, we'll come out at first light in the morning when the weather gets better, and we did. And we got out there, we found his boat. He wasn't alive, and to this day I wonder if we had been able to go out that night, could we have saved him? And to make that decision is a very difficult one to do.
The instructors decide to postpone training for the day. Bad weather is nothing new for a skilled search and rescue pilot, but for the candidates, it's best to learn the basics in calmer conditions. Hoisting SAR-techs onto a moving vessel will have to wait.
Hurricane-force winds outside, so that's a little bit beyond the student's ability to learn effectively on it, not to mention it's pretty tough on the aircraft. We like to work up to the bad weather. It's certainly well within limits to go out and do a rescue, but it's just not a very good teaching environment.
You have a pretty good idea with winds like today that you're not going to be going, but you still can't kind of relax. So you still got to check your NOTAMs, check your weather, be prepared as if you're going.
Stood down on today's training exercise, the student cormorant pilots will have time to catch up on other tasks.
Kind of do your own self-study or jump in the CPT and practice starts and emergencies. There's always administration to do or something. Work out at the gym is good. If we know we're down for a few hours or whatever, I'll run over, and it's a good stress reliever for sure.
With winds gusting to over 80 knots, the students take the time to reflect on the training at 442 Squadron.
This course is designed to not only teach you about the specifics of search and rescue and what you might be faced with, but also to keep you challenged, to keep you thinking about different scenarios you may or may not encounter while you're flying. There's always an element of stress when you go up because you're learning a new skill, you want to do well, and the course is designed to keep you on your toes.
Still, the candidates know that training scenarios are no match for real live rescues.
In the real missions, that's when you're really doing it. I mean, it's one thing in a training environment when you have a SAR-tech on the hoist and it's a lot of fun, but it's a whole other thing when there's a sinking ship out at sea and you're there to hopefully save those lives and hopefully get them out of danger. So,
the instructors know what it takes to be a search and rescue pilot. They try their best to prepare the students for real missions by sharing their experience and giving them challenging run-throughs.
If we're over top of an area and they're handling it very well, we're going to start to throw curveballs at them just to sort of gauge them and prepare them for what they're going to see when they get to the units.
For the instructors, search and rescue is their passion, even if they aren't doing it themselves.
You're living vicariously through their accomplishments. It makes up a bit for the fact that we don't, at the school generally, get to participate in rescues. We're helping other people to become a crew member to go participate in rescues.
Many instructors rotate back into live action with search and rescue squadrons, despite the odd hours and dangerous circumstances.
The 2 o'clock in the morning calls on those miserable nights wear on your nerves a little bit. They were on my wife's nerves a little bit. I'm still having fun, so I'll keep doing it.
The best part of my job is when I have my harness on and I asked for clearance to open the door because we're going to do some door work. And now my office is just, it's this beautiful view. It's just, and it is very nice. I really enjoy my job.
If anything, this week has taught the candidates two important lessons. Be prepared and be adaptable. On the next call out, live hoisting from a moving vessel. Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions.